Welcome to Capital Intelligence. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating and, frankly, kind of completely backwards economic reality of the modern era. We're looking at the 2025 wealth paradox. Right now, people with the absolute least amount of capital are spending the most money to visibly look rich, while the truly ultra-wealthy, they are quietly paying a massive premium to stay completely invisible. It's this huge structural reversal in how status is communicated, and honestly, understanding this shift is absolutely crucial for your own financial literacy.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our agenda for this explainer. First, we'll hit the conspicuous consumption trap. Then, the economics of looking rich, followed by social media and fake wealth. After that, we'll cover the rise of discrete wealth, and finally, we'll wrap up with how to redefine your true assets.
Section 1. The conspicuous consumption trap.
To really get this, we actually have to look back at the Gilded Age. That was a time defined by rapid industrialization and suddenly minted millionaires. The economist Thorstein Veblen noticed a very specific behavior among this newly rich crowd. They weren't just buying things they needed, they were actively displaying their wealth through these lavish, totally unnecessary expenditures, purely to build prestige and intimidate others. Veblen actually coined this exact behavior, conspicuous consumption. It's basically buying goods just to show off your wealth and status, rather than for the actual use of the item. And modern economists, like Moab and Neiman, have added a super interesting layer to this. They point out that if you have highly observable human capital, like a prestigious job title or a well-known degree, you actually have very little need to signal your success. Your title does all the talking for you. But if your accomplishments aren't easily certified on paper, the psychological and social drive to impress others through what you buy becomes incredibly strong.
And, this trap is definitely not new. Let me share a fantastic little anecdote about the 18th century French philosopher Denis Diderot. Back in 1765, Diderot was living in relative poverty until Catherine the Great of Russia bought his library for a small fortune. So, flush with cash, he goes out and buys this beautiful, luxurious scarlet robe. But there was a catch. The robe was so magnificent that everything else he owned looked ridiculously cheap by comparison. He literally wrote that there was no more coordination, no more unity, no more beauty in his home. So to match this one robe, he bought a new rug from Damascus, new sculptures, a brand new leather chair. He fell into a devastating consumption spiral, upgrading his entire life just to match a single item. Today, we call that the Diderot Effect.
Section 2. The economics of looking rich. And this brilliantly illustrates why so many working-class individuals still fall into this trap today. It's the threshold Z signaling model. In social and professional interactions, observers, think employers, landlords, or even just peers, set a perceived boundary which we call threshold Z. If they perceive your status to be below that threshold, you are highly likely to face discrimination, be viewed as less competent, or totally miss out on networking opportunities. To avoid this, targets, the people being observed, are economically forced to invest in costly signals. We're talking premium clothing or expensive cars, just to push their perceived status above that invisible line.
Which means, looking rich isn't always about vanity. Often, it is a hardcore structural survival mechanism. Studies show that in elite labor markets, candidates wearing high-status clothing are judged as significantly less likely to have negative traits and are recommended for hire way more frequently. The really tragic irony here is that working-class individuals have to spend the very capital they desperately need to build real wealth just to signal competence and survive, and that effectively keeps them locked right in poverty.
Section 3. Social media and fake wealth. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the digital age has completely weaponized that survival mechanism. We are seeing a massive surge in everyday retail investors using sentiment analysis algorithms and crowdsourcing to make trading decisions, all based on social media chatter. Big financial institutions and hedge funds are using AI to parse through millions of tweets just to measure investor mood. But for the everyday user, this reliance on the so-called wisdom of the crowd almost always devolves into incredibly chaotic, emotion-driven trading. Researchers actually call this the smartphone effect. News and financial panic travel instantly right to the devices in our pockets. Both the Federal Reserve and FINRA have issued some pretty stark warnings about this. Social media is actively driving young retail investors into high-risk crypto and super volatile meme stocks, and a lot of it is based on the totally unqualified advice of finfluencers. The result? Amplified FOMO, deep financial anxiety, and a whole generation of investors exposing themselves to massive losses just to chase the aesthetic of wealth instead of prioritizing stable, long-term returns.
Section 4. The rise of discrete wealth.
Okay, here is the ultimate plot twist. While the middle and working classes are drowning in flashy logos and meme stock anxiety just to look rich, the actual elite have completely inverted the signaling code. Look at the stark contrast between 2015 and 2025. Back in 2015, wealth was highly visible, right? Flashy logos, heavy social media presence, classic conspicuous consumption. But in 2025, it's all about being digitally invisible. The loudest social media accounts these days often mask intense financial anxiety, while having a minimal digital footprint now actively correlates with a much higher net worth. The rules have just completely flipped.
The 2025 Discrete Wealth Playbook has a totally new set of markers. First up, absolute digital invisibility. Being unsearchable is basically the ultimate flex now. Second is private health optimization. Instead of buying a $25,000 watch that literally anyone on the street can see, they're dropping $25,000 on executive health protocols, full-body MRIs, and genetic analysis, investments that announce absolutely nothing to the public. Third, deeply researched, sustainable ESG investments. And finally, time and optionality. Navigating really complex sustainable investments or having the flexibility to travel without schedule constraints, that requires deep knowledge and true independence. And that signals far more sophistication and social capital than a designer bag ever could.
Let's move to Section 5, redefining your true assets, and see how this all builds together for your own financial strategy. Economists Wolf and Sheridan break down assets into a really clear framework, which is just vital for real financial literacy. You've got marketable wealth, that's stuff easily converted to cash, like savings and stocks. Then there's financial wealth, which actually strips out your primary residence to show what liquid funds you genuinely have for short-term needs. Augmented wealth covers your future potential, like pensions, and crucially, intangible assets, your human, cultural, and social capital. Notice something missing? A luxury car or a flashy wardrobe definitely doesn't make this list as a wealth-generating asset.
Sociologist Thomas Shapiro actually found a really profound class difference in how these exact assets are viewed. The working class perspective tends to see assets as life support, just a cushion for bad times and emergencies. The dream is simply to ease hardship. But the middle and upper class view? They treat assets as power and freedom. They aren't just hoarding them for an emergency, they're actively using them to leverage new opportunities and compound their position in life.
So, the big question. How do you stop buying liabilities that are basically just disguised as status symbols? Author James Clear offers some highly actionable methods for mastering that Diderot effect we talked about earlier. Let's run through them. Step 1. Reduce exposure to triggers. Seriously, just unsubscribe from those promo emails. Step 2. Only buy items that fit your current system. Don't buy the scarlet robe if it means you're going to have to buy a new rug to match it. Step 3. Set strict, self-imposed spending limits. And step 4, implement a buy one, give one rule to ruthlessly curate your life and stop that mindless accumulation.
So, the crucial point is beautifully summarized by Denis Diderot himself after his pretty miserable experience with that scarlet robe. He said, "Poverty has its freedoms, opulence has its obstacles. There is immense, true freedom found in stepping off the signaling treadmill. By living intentionally below that threshold of flashy visibility, you actually protect your capital and you build genuine, discrete wealth." I want to leave you with a thought to really audit your own life choices as you continue to build your capital intelligence. Look closely at where your money is going this month and ask yourself honestly, are your assets buying you status or are they buying you freedom? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to look at your own ledger today with a completely new perspective.